Hey everybody, it's Mr. Clausen. Just wanted to go over bond energy diagrams with you one more time. This unit's all about how the energy is stored in chemical bonds, and we show that by over here on the vertical axis. As we go up, what we're representing is the amount of energy that's currently in the reaction. So as you go across from left to right, you start with the reactants and then move forward to your products. So as we see here, what happens is, in order to get the reactants to break apart and rearrange their chemical bonds, you have to put energy in to break these bonds apart. So momentarily what we have is we actually have more energy in the reaction than what we started with. Now this step in the middle we call the intermediates, and really all it just means is the reaction, the atoms are just all mixed up, all broken apart, they're all pushed around, and really it's kind of a mystery as to what's happening, and it doesn't much matter what's going on, because really all we need to know is what happens here in the end. Now forming bonds gives us that energy back, and so we've indicated that here with this red line. So the energy that's coming back out happens because we are forming new bonds and releasing some of that energy as the atoms come closer together. Now if you take a look at this one, there's a difference here in the height from where we started with the reactants and where we ended with the products. This change in height on this graph we refer to as delta H. And since in this case it's lower, what we can actually see is that the energy of the system is lower than what it started with. And so if we take a look here, there's the energy we put in, and there's the energy we get back out. And if we take a look at the difference here, we can see that we now have actually less energy than what we started with stored inside those chemical bonds. And so what happens is the energy has been released out of the system. Okay? And since the energy is coming out of the system, we call this exothermic. So once again, the energy that went in to break the bonds is less than the energy we got back when we formed them, so we have extra energy, and this is leaving the system and going to the surroundings. Now there is a reverse for this, okay, where you have the reactants and you have the products, and the same thing happens. You got to put energy in to get the bonds to move apart. Remember, atoms want to be closer together. They want to share those electrons when possible, so it takes energy to remove them. You get the same intermediate step that we did before, and then in this case, when the new bonds are formed, in this case, less energy is coming back out than what we originally put in, and so the products in our reaction are actually storing more of that energy, and we don't get as much energy out. As a result here, the change in energy for the system ends up being a positive number, which now means there's more energy stored in the system than what there originally was. Where did that energy come from? Well, it had to come from the surroundings. What we say here is we call this an endothermic reaction. The energy is going in to the system as opposed to coming out. And you can see that again here. We indicate going back on the graph. You can see once again you have that change in height for the two graphs. And what happens here, since the products end at a higher energy than what they started with, we call that endothermic. All right, so here we have it. Exothermic reactions end up requiring less energy than what you put into them. So the amount of energy you put in, you get more than what you put in when you come back out, and where that extra energy comes out. And so an exothermic reaction ends up feeling hot because the energy is going to the surroundings. In an endothermic reaction, you don't get as much energy out as you put into the reaction, and as a result, the reaction itself actually pulls energy from the surroundings, and the energy goes in there into the system, and we experience this as being cold to the touch. So there you have it. It's all about bond energy. It's where you start versus where you end. If you end at a lower energy, that extra energy goes out and it feels hot, exothermic. If you end at a higher energy than what you started with, this is going to mean that you have extra energy going in, and the energy is going in, it's going to feel cold, and we call it endothermic. Hope it helped. We'll see you in class tomorrow.